Zach, we are back and we are talking dynasty moves to make or not right now. Getting into another one here after what has been kind of a slow start to the season. It's after week 3. We're heading into week 4 now. We got lots of questions out there. We got a lot of things to talk about today. So we're going to get right into it. But before we do, make sure you're liking the video if you enjoy it. Comment down below some of the moves you're trying to make. Let us know. And we want to hear from you over in our Discord and over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial and see what we can do for your dynasty teams this season. But with that said, Zach, and all the promo in the books, let's get to the content that people came for with segment number 1. Instead of just kicking it straight to you for a move to make, got a discussion question. Some of these have kind of been floating around the Discord. I pulled them from there. So, hey, another reason to hop in there. We've already had some discussions in the Discord about these things. But the first thing off the rip, who is your favorite buy low trade target right now this week after week 3, heading into week 4? I will say this is pretty bold considering he hasn't played yet this week. But, hey, we'll see what happens. We'll see how we feel about him tomorrow. But I know you feel about this guy good today, and you felt about him good this offseason as well. Why don't you get into him?
Yeah, Bob, look, as when this video drops, he will have played. We'll see how he does. But for me, it's very securely Brian Robinson, the Commanders running back. You know, I look for security at the running back position. I don't necessarily look for high ceiling. I don't have a lot of Breece Hall shares. I don't have a lot of CMC shares. I don't have a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs shares. I have a whole heck of a lot of Brian Robinson shares, though, because I feel secure in his position, at least through his rookie contract, which is until the end of 2025. Then who knows what's going to happen. But he's been a very productive running back nonetheless. And again, not necessarily top 5 productive, but productive enough for you to start and plug in your lineup and look at the end of the day and not have a deficit at the running back position unless you are going against a CMC or a Breece Hall or anything like that. So, look, through 2 games thus far, he's the Commanders' RB1. He in his first game, he got 16 touches. Last week, he got 20 touches. We'll see how Monday night goes against the Bengals. It is going to be a better defense and a better rush defense that he's going to go up against. But in 2 games, he's averaging 6 yards a carry with 29 carries. That's not a small sample size. So that's definitely something that you feel good about. The Commanders continuing to give him more opportunities and a better bulk of the work as opposed to Austin Eckler, who is going to be there. He's a thing, but he's just not the Austin Eckler of 3 years ago. That's just not his role anymore or his ceiling. So Brian Robinson is the running back in Washington. If you're going to have one of the running backs out of the Commanders' backfield, that is the one you want. And he also has 7 targets to boot. So it's not like Austin Eckler's coming in and taking all the passing work. And look, when Brian Robinson is getting targeted, he's getting some decent work. I think he has 52 yards on 4 receptions thus far. Again, 2 games, so 2 receptions a game. But he's had some pretty clutch receptions for the Commanders. So they're not just taking him off the field in passing down situations and giving Austin Eckler all the work. So those are things you want to see. You want you want Brian Robinson to get a majority of the share on the ground and a piece of the passing pie in that running back room. So I feel really comfortable buying in on Brian Robinson. I've been buying him all offseason. If I needed a running back right now with all the injuries that we've seen the last couple of weeks, he'd be somebody I'd be targeting. I looked on Dynasty Daddy this morning, and I sent this screenshot to you because I just don't know what's happening. Like, put me in these leagues, please. Somebody invite me to these. There was 2 leagues where Brian Robinson sold this morning for a 3rd-round pick. I don't understand it. I don't think that 90% of the people watching this video will be able to get that deal. I want to make that abundantly clear. However, do a price check in your league because clearly it's happening. Some other more realistic deals that I saw for Brian Robinson. I saw Brian Robinson for Justin Fields and Chase Brown. I would absolutely be ecstatic to be on the receiving end of Brian Robinson on that one. And then I love this one. This was more of a tier down, if you want to use air quotes. Brian Robinson and a 25-second for Josh Jacobs. I would absolutely love to tier down from Josh Jacobs to Brian Robinson and pick up a 2nd-round pick. So I think these are pretty affordable, pretty good deals that you're able to get out there in your leagues. I saw a couple Brian Robinson for 1st-round picks too, and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I don't want to do that. But the majority of the trades that I saw on Dynasty Daddy were trades that I would feel comfortable making, Bob, and that's why he's on my list. he has a good position in that Commanders backfield. It's definitely not his and his alone, but he's got a good path to 16 to 20 touches a game, and that's all I can ask for out of security in the running back position. And like I said before, Bob, just not have a deficit at the running back position, like you've seen with DeAndre Swift the past couple of weeks, where you're plugging him in and you're getting 5 or 6 points. That is a disappointment. You look at Brian Robinson, week 1, you got 17 points, 17.9 fantasy points. Week 2, you got 14.6. So that's good. I feel good about looking at my starting lineup and seeing those amount of points. So for me, I'm buying low on Brian Robinson this week, Bob.
Yeah, you could certainly do worse than going after Brian Robinson. I don't hate it. I don't know if I'd make the deal tearing down off of Josh Jacobs. I know a lot of our concern with Josh Jacobs coming into the season was the wear and tear that he's had and his contract situation. But I tell you what, Marshawn Lloyd being continuously banged up has done nothing to strike fear into my opinion that Josh Jacobs, I've seen the Packers work through contract deals with not just Aaron Jones, but also A.J. Dillon, and kind of just keep around who they want to keep around and find ways to make the money work. And if Josh Jacobs has been productive so far, so I don't hate the deal. I think that's a fine tear down. I think that's about right, but I'd probably still just prefer to keep Josh Jacobs or possibly even tier up into Josh Jacobs from Brian Robinson. Either way, don't hate either side. Don't hate the call out there. And I think you touched on a point where he is facing off against a better defense tonight against Cincinnati. And I think that could open that buy low window for you even more accessible because we're a knee-jerk society. We love, overreacting to bad games, down games, whatever it might be, if he even has one. We don't know yet. But I think you can do something like that going after Ramondre Stevenson, who had a tough week this past week. After 2 great weeks to start the season, nonetheless, he struggled to find room to work with his left tackle and left guard, both out last week. And this game quickly got out of hand for the Patriots, while only down 2 scores for a good chunk of the game. That's a lot for the Patriots. The Patriots are not a high-powered offense at this moment. It is what it is. People might get a little heated by me saying that, but that's a surprise to no one. Now they get San Francisco next week, and they're another team who can run up the score quickly, at least in terms of the Patriots team, and quite possibly factor Ramondre Stevenson out of the game plan, especially if he's still missing those 2 pieces of that offensive line, which definitely hurt him. So I don't know if you can really buy low right this second, but he's definitely somebody that I want to kind of keep an eye on, see how he does this week, because like Brian Robinson, he's the guy there. Antonio Gibson is there. He'll take some work, especially when they're down. He'll get some receiving work and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's Ramrod's offense. It's Ramondre Stevenson's offense. I'm going to go ahead and try to target him if I absolutely can. You're probably going to have to pay close to a first-round pick. That doesn't mean you have to pay a first-round pick. And one thing that people have been, kind of saying in the comments or shooting out in the comments and in the Discord is that you might be having trouble trying to get deals done. And one of my biggest suggestions trying to get deals done in season is instead of trying to trade picks for players as much as we throw out picks for players as options, we want to kind of focus on that value range and then compare the pick range that we suggest to a player in that similar value range. Try working players for players in the season, picks for picks in the off season. That sometimes helps you out that little bit more, getting deals done, especially in the season. So Ramondre Stevenson is definitely somebody I'm going after and keeping an eye on because I think we're probably in for another down week. I'm probably leaving him on my bench as much as San Fran has been somewhat susceptible to the run more than years past this year. I am definitely concerned with what could be this year. And like I said, just with the possible scheming of the offense, he might get factored out pretty quickly. So who's your favorite sell high right now at this point? We're 3 weeks in. I got a guy that is really coming off a hot week. You got a guy who's coming off a couple hot weeks to start the year. And then another guy. So we got a few guys here to talk about that might be too easy, at least for mine. I think they might be too easy. But Zach, talk about your favorite sell high candidate right now. Who are you running to try to get off your roster for whatever you can get right now?
Yeah, Bob, my sell high candidate is going to be Allen Lazard, who at this present moment is the wide receiver 14. That could very much change based on the 2 games on Monday Night Football. However, after 3 weeks, he's probably still a top 20 wide receiver. The offense has been weird so far through 2 games. I don't really know if they've found their true identity. I think the Jets are still figuring it out, and Allen Lazard is a part of that figuring it out process because Mike Williams hasn't really been that involved, although he did start to get involved On Thursday Night Football, we're seeing more Braylon Allen taking handoffs and Breece Hall lining up at the wide receiver position. The offense is very much in flux, and that's okay. Like, it's not okay for our fantasy teams, but that's okay. They're figuring it out, and they've won the last 2 games. So for me, if I have Alan Lazard, if I can get whatever I can at this point, I just don't believe in the long-term viability. He may very well produce this year. I just don't know how long does that last. Like, are we actually projecting Alan Lazard to finish as, let's just even take this on a broader spectrum, a top 30 wide receiver this season? Like, I don't even think that's a realistic possibility. We're seeing Tyler Conklin get more involved. Mike Williams is going to get more involved in this offense. They're clearly entrusting Braylon Allen with more of an opportunity in this offense. And so I think all that comes at the expense of Alan Lazard and the production we've seen, where he's getting 9 targets in week 1 and 16 targets on the season thus far. I think that's just going to be as a matter of fact, his targets have diminished every week since week 1. He just so happened to have a touchdown last week, which increased his fantasy output. But wide receiver 14 right now, that's a way to sell it, right? Like, who wants the wide receiver 14? It's to me, it's just a totally bogus. It's just one of these random things that happens in the beginning of the season, which the season has been absolutely absurd. That's another topic for another day. But I did look on Dynasty Daddy for recent trades for Alan Lazard, and this might be the optimal time to try and sell him. I did look within the last 3 days since the Thursday Night Football game is when I looked for Alan Lazard trades. I saw a lot of Alan Lazard for a 3rd-round pick. Look, if I'm in a competing spot, I might hang on to him for that. I might hang on to, Aaron Rodgers, one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite weapons, over a 3rd-round pick. If I'm rebuilding, just take the 3rd-round pick and move on, right? Don't try and wait for an increased target share. Like, it's not coming. One trade that I did see that, and I think this is where you could really use Alan Lazard, is trying to trade up to another piece, is Alan Lazard, Chase Brown, and a 3rd-round pick for Rashee Rice. I don't know how realistic that trade is. I did see it, but more, I'm trying to take the model of that trade, right? I'm trying to take Alan Lazard plus pieces and get me something bougie, which I'm almost there, by the way, with Rashee Rice. Like, I just can't deny it anymore. It sucks. Like, I hate when I'm wrong, but after Sunday night, like, what am I going to say anymore at this point? Like, he's very clearly his favorite weapon. I don't even think it's all that good. It's just, he just happens to be the one guy that's available, consistent, and not 55 years old like Travis Kelce is for Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball to. So that kind of trade model where you're trading 2 or 3 pieces plus Alan Lazard to get a very startable piece in Rashee Rice is the model I try to use there in that trade.
Yeah, no, I hear. I think you need to make that 3 at first, and then you can have a discussion there, Zach. I don't think you're close to anything else otherwise. I know your reaction says
the
otherwise.
whole point of this is that people are accepting these deals. This is not, we made this up in the trade calculator.
I get that.
This is people accepted this deal in real life. So just ask. You never know.
Yeah. And like I said, I think realistically, maybe start with a second, but looking at it realistically, and that there's, different levels of leagues out there with levels of experience out there. And in some leagues, there's probably a lot of hopium still for Chase Brown. I've kind of let go at this point. I don't see a lot happening for him. Alan Lazard is somebody who we've seen kind of pop up and go away very quickly. I agree with you. I think it's going to be hard for him to finish as a top 30 wide receiver, if nothing else, just because there are a lot of very good wide receivers in the league. I just don't see it happening for that cost. So, I mean, knock on some doors, feel free to shoot some offers out. But I got what I would consider kind of a bogus trade up here too, with one of the next ones. But yeah, I hear you. I like the idea, the optics of it, or at least that structure of trying to go throw some pieces together that I believe to be shorter term or not really that long-term viable for Rashee Rice. I'd love to go do that. But for me, it's pretty obvious. We had this discussion in the Discord as well. Jauan Jennings, it's too easy because this offense is far too crowded already. To consider Jauan Jennings to end up being a long-term fixture in this offense is just not possible. They have George Kittle. They have Deebo Samuel. They have Brandon Ayuk. They have CMC coming back eventually. more than likely. He's going to take up target share. And then you also have at some point they want to get Ricky Pearsall involved. So this offense just doesn't have it. If you look at Juwan Jennings last year, he actually surpassed his last year receiving total in 3 games this year. His 14 games he played last year already surpassed that due to just a monster game. Hey, it was awesome if you were able to pick him up or stream him last week. I got Juwan Jennings this week, so that didn't help me none. But it's just once Debo's back, once Kittle's back, I didn't even put on here once CMC is back, kind of thought of that off the rip. And once Brandon Ayuk returns to form, something I believe is coming, Juwan Jennings is just going to be back to a super desperate streaming option for you. Nothing more, nothing less in favorable matchup. So recent trades for him all happening today. Make sure I check today. So as of 9/23, September 23rd, by noon, recent trades, 27 second, 25 third, 25 second. Also a nice little one, Juwan Jennings, plus a second round pick for Mike Evans. I'm all about it. I think a second is probably the going range of value for Mike Evans. Anyway, you throw a receiver to make them feel better about losing one, by all means. And if that one was too easy for y'all, I did want to throw Quentin Johnston on here as well. And he's had a lot better start to the year. Don't get me wrong. He's been able to catch the ball this year. That's super important. But he's also been able to catch a lot of balls for touchdowns. But his touchdown rate is sky high right now, and that's led to a lot of the excitement around Quentin Johnston. His touchdown rate is currently 23%, so 23% of his targets have been converted into touchdowns, while the league average is generally around 4%. So can he still improve in other ways? Yes, totally possible. And maybe that ends up being something closer to what the original expectations were for him, but with how limited I think this offense isn't just in a pure volume aspect from passing, I really struggle getting super excited about anyone in this offense, especially with somebody with as many glaring red flags as Quentin Johnston had last year. I really struggle with it. So recent trades also just found today, Zay Flowers, straight up. All about it. Give me that all day. Getting Jordan Mason and a 26 second round pick. All about it. Give me that. A 25 second round pick straight up. I think you could do worse. Amari Cooper and another trade separate. Sam Darnold in Superflex. Zach, I know you're a huge Sam Darnold guy, so you're going to be all about that deal. But I'm willing to get out. Your sell window is wide open right now. If you're at all concerned with what we saw last year, if you're willing to get something better than what you were able to get in the offseason, when we were still talking about trying to get away from him then, if you weren't able to then, his value has kind of come up, or at least there's interest around the guy again. I'm saying see you later. Zach, what are you saying?
Yeah, Bob, hard to really disagree with those points. I mean, anytime you get that boom week from a player that I don't put Quentin Johnston and Juwan Jennings in the same category, more specifically to the Juwan Jennings point, if you can get something for that boom week. But yeah, if I could get anything, good Lord, I would jettison him off my team as quick as possible. And if there's anybody that I could jettison faster or whatever, because I never use the word jettison in my regular lexicon, is Quentin Johnston. Good Lord, give me anything you can for Quentin Johnston. I'm not a believer in this. And listen, as we just spoke about with Rashee Rice, I will admit when I'm wrong. I will. It will take me a little while to warm up and to get there. I don't care if I'm wrong on Quentin Johnston. I don't want any Quentin Johnston. I think in my 30-plus leagues, I have one share because I was forced to draft him. Somebody was like, "You're going to draft Quentin Johnston." And I was like, okay, fine. But other than that, I don't have any Quentin Johnston. I don't want any Quentin Johnston. And if I could get him, you said Sam Darnold. Oh my God, I'd be so happy. Look, I'm willing to be wrong on Quentin Johnston. It's just not a player I want. So
you're talking about more quarterbacks here. You've been a big quarterback guy this season so far. I think you've talked quarterbacks every week of moves to make since we started the year, which is okay. You've brought up good points every time. And you got another one here because quarterbacks have been problems for myself, for people in general, with offenses gelling. Talk about the quarterback merry-go-round, which is your notes here. I'd love to hear everything you got to say about it. What do you got?
Yeah, Bob, my move to make this week is play the quarterback merry-go-round. As you just said there, which quarterbacks to buy, which quarterbacks to sell. At this point, we have seen so much change in the quarterback position. And look, not all of it is like, oh, you got to sell this guy. Like, you're not selling Joe Burrow, right? You know that September is a rough month. I just think you still believes in Joe Burrow at the beginning of this month. And now you're like, September, I'm never starting Joe Burrow ever again. There's just been so much change, though, right? So I want to talk about some buys, some sells, and somebody to watch out for, okay?
Ooh, I love this.
Every week, I'm trying to capitalize on weekly buys and sells on quarterbacks for the ones that I do and don't believe, all right? So this week, I'm really trying to unload Daniel Jones. He's had 2 back-to-back top 10 quarterback weeks. And a lot of it, if you're actually watching, is what you wish a lot of other quarterbacks would just do. And just throw it up to your wide receiver, right? Look, Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback, but at the very least, he is just saying, Malik Neighbors down there somewhere. Here you go. And you know what? Malik Neighbors, as of this recording, is the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football.
Stud.
And it's not because of Daniel Jones. It's because of Malik Neighbors. So look, at the very least, Daniel Jones is doing what you want every quarterback with an alpha wide receiver to do, and a lot of them won't do. And it's just chuck the ball to the guy, put it in the area code, and he'll catch it. You know, we saw this last year with like Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs with Justin Jefferson. Just throw it to the guy. He'll figure it out. And so Daniel Jones is doing that right now. He's got back-to-back top 10 fantasy weeks, and I'm trying to get him off my roster at this point. He may very well be fantasy relevant this season. He's got a great head coach and obviously an alpha wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. However, I don't believe in the long-term sustainability of Daniel Jones as the New York Giants quarterback. And I'm not saying that he will be replaced this year. I'm saying if they're in a good spot in the draft, they may look at a quarterback or as we have talked about ad nauseum, Sam Darnold is going to get an offer from somebody next year, whether it's the Vikings or another team. And Daboll is just another coach that if I was Sam Darnold, I'd want to play for. So if I can unload Daniel Jones at this point and get whatever I could at this, I don't think you can get a first-round pick. And I wouldn't be holding out for one either because I think that's just ridiculous. You get a second-round plus, it's time to move on from Daniel Jones. And I say that, again, with the asterisk of you might get a somewhat decent fantasy season from Daniel Jones. You did 2 years ago, too, and a lot of that was off of his legs. But I just don't think it's sustainable long-term. Typically, with the positions that I'm talking about here, Bob, just like I did Brian Robinson in my first point, I'm looking for security beyond this season. I'm not just looking for a plug-and-play kind of a thing. And I will talk about one plug-and-play option. So if I can unload Daniel Jones at this point, I will. Even if he's had 2 very good fantasy weeks, I will take my chances. So moving on from Daniel Jones, you talked about it earlier. I would still absolutely love to buy Sam Darnold. I'm just not sure at this point, Bob. We had this discussion, I think, last week. I don't know if he continues this pace of play and doesn't suffer some kind of significant injury. And I'm not talking about like an ACL because we've seen quarterbacks come back from ACLs and Achilles all the time. How he is not a starting quarterback in this league in 2025. I would love for it to still be in Minnesota. We talked about it before the show. Don't know how realistic that is. I think it's a little bit more realistic than you do. But nonetheless, if I was him, I'd be very selective where I went in 2025. That's why I do think the Giants are a possibility. But I'm in. And I actually do have a lot of Sam Darnold shares because I had Sam Darnold shares from when he was Brock Purdy's backup quarterback. So I have a lot of Brock Purdy shares. So I have 2 starting quarterbacks now in a lot of my leagues, including our Rewinders league, as a matter of fact. And I believe in him and what he's doing right now. He's aided by probably the top defense in the NFL right now and a great head coach. But it's not like they're winning games 13-10. He had 4 touchdown passes yesterday, all to different guys. And so it's a product of that offense. It's a product of the head coach, but it's also a product of Sam Darnold being talented, which is what we've always discussed with him. He's talented. He's just in his own head. He's not in a good – look, we can extrapolate this conversation and go so much deeper. We don't have the time to do that, but you're seeing quarterbacks like Malik Willis go to another system and be successful. Baker Mayfield go to another system and be successful. We've seen quarterbacks from that the Browns let go, be successful elsewhere. The Jets let go and be successful elsewhere. The Panthers let go and be successful elsewhere. So I think that Sam Darnold might have finally figured it out, needed some time to just chill out and learn a little bit about the league and himself. He was in a great system last year with Shanahan, and now he's in a fantastic system with Kevin O'Connell. I believe in Sam Darnold long term. I can't sit here and tell you he's going to be the model of consistent health, because that's always been his concern. And even today, he's getting MRIs. I think everything's okay. I'd love to be able to buy in on Sam Darnold. I don't know what the price point is anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm not buying Sam Darnold now because I have so many shares, but I still would try to get him, because if he goes out there and gets that Baker Mayfield / Geno Smith-esque contract, the price goes up even more. You know how many people at this point last year benefited from buying Baker Mayfield when they had the opportunity, or 2 years ago from buying Geno Smith? That's the situation there with Sam Darnold. And then last but not least, buying or selling, depending on my team situation, is Andy Dalton. I'm not expecting a 300-yard, 3-touchdown performance every week. I am expecting a consistent 15 fantasy points every single week, because he is a competent, mature quarterback. And that's just not what the Carolina Panthers had. They have weapons. They have a good coach to run an offense. And so if I was in a rebuilding situation and I had Andy Dalton, I'd sell. If I was in a competing position and I needed a quarterback 3, I'd buy. Obviously, depending on the price tag. The one thing I want to say, just one quarterback to look out for, Bob. Mason Rudolph. If you need another quarterback, the flex from Bob, let's go. I've never seen that before. That was great. Mason Rudolph is somebody to keep your eye on. Brian Callahan is getting so frustrated with Will Levis out there. And it's becoming the weekly meme to see the reaction either from Callahan or Will Levis or his teammates based off the big Will Levis turnover. And that is a very, very veteran team. It's not a young team. It's not a team that has time to let Will Levis figure it out, unfortunately for Will Levis. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard, a lot of veterans on that defensive side as well. They're not going to wait for Will Levis to figure it out. We saw Will Levis come in Mason Rudolph come in last year and be a competent, mature quarterback like Andy Dalton. And I'm not saying that you can start Mason Rudolph with any kind of comfortability, but you'd like him to be your quarterback 3 if there's some kind of an emergency or a bye week or a 1 or 2 week injury. Like I would love to have Andy Dalton right now if I'm still waiting on Jordan Love to be back. I would absolutely love to have Andy Dalton right now and at least feel safe and secure that I'm getting 14 to 15 points at one of my super flex or quarterback spots. So the name to keep your eye on. Maybe go out there and see if you can purge cheaply or pick up off your waiver wire is Mason Rudolph, because I just think it's a matter of time till he's under center for the Titans, Bob.
I just love that you brought it up, because I brought that up before the season started, moves to make. I'm like, I don't think Will Levis' leash is going to be that long. And you in the comments, not all of you, but you, and you were all like, no, Will Levis is the guy. He's the one. He has 8 turnovers through 3 weeks. This ain't the dude. This ain't that guy. You know, you get some leeway with turnovers when you do incredible things, but you don't get leeway for over 2 turnovers a game. I'm sorry, you don't. So absolutely go get Mason Rudolph to preview an upcoming segment. Somebody to panic about if you're not panicking, Will Levis, because I don't think he's starting for much longer, in my opinion. But let's move on before we get into it too much. Love that segment there. Thank you for touching on some quarterbacks and getting me a little fired up there a little bit. But moving into the next segment here, my move to make this week, I'm looking to buy some rookie running backs. Maybe not the ones you're thinking, but Braylon Allen, Bucky Irving. You touched on Braylon Allen earlier, a guy who is getting involved. And I'm going to preface this. I'm not saying particularly with Braylon Allen that he's going to surpass Breece Hall. This is one of those occasions where we can have 2 really good running backs. And I think part of the reason why they can be really good in this offense is because they don't have that receiving entity outside of Garrett Wilson that is really like a long-term consistent stud. They can work off these 2 running backs. They both complement each other really well, lightning and thunder and all that. Bucky Irving, on the other hand, there's some smoke there. Between Rachaad White just not being super efficient throughout his entire career, that's no secret. Bucky Irving, been very efficient so far this season. So let's talk about it before I get too off base here. These two continue to make an impact every time they touch the ball behind their notable veteran competition. We've seen that backfields on these days can support, on occasion, two ball carriers to some extent. And I believe Braylon Allen can turn into, if he isn't already, a startable complement in your flex spot to beside Breece Hall in that offense, with added upside as a handcuff if Hall were to ever miss time for any reason, not to speak that into existence. There is also, and I talked about this in the Discord, there is also the smidge of upside, and I don't like playing in 100th percentile outcomes, but there is the 100th percentile outcome that Breece Hall's contract is up after next season. And with how running backs are and organizations are with running backs, let's say more particularly, maybe he doesn't get paid. Maybe there's some drama. Again, that's the 100th percentile outcome that then Braylon Allen would then shift in if there's no fix outside of what's going on there now to add a running back, whether veteran, whether through the rookie draft, whatever the case is. Braylon Allen, love him as a buy, want to go get some. Was not able to get either of these guys in my rookie drafts for one reason or another. I know specifically our very own Hoff sniped me on Bucky Irving in one of my drafts, so I was pretty upset about that. But either way, talking about Bucky Irving a little bit, I know Rachaad White was banged up coming into the week last week. I believe he had a groin issue going on, but his inefficiency is nothing new. I mean, it'd be one thing if this was the worst week he's ever played, and that's why he was so inefficient, but he's rarely been at above 4 yards per carry ball carrier, but he's been a volume back, so he's kind of managed, and he gets a lot in the receiving work as well, so that helps. But fact of the matter, and this is noted by the coaching staff saying today, that he's earned more opportunities in this offense. If Bucky's going to stay efficient, he's going to carve out more work in this offense, and he certainly has. I want to go get these guys. I want to make amends on missing these guys in my rookie drafts. Some recent trades, looking at Dynasty Daddy, Bucky Irving for Jaylen Warren. Get Jaylen Warren and really anybody on the Steelers offense off my team. Jaylen Warren has been a ghost since this new regime with Artie Smith. And I think there was some hope for Jaylen Warren, but Noah talked about it greatly before the season, just saying that, hey, Jaylen Warren is not going to fit with what Artie Smith wants to do. That's come to fruition. Darnell Mooney, who's been kind of sneaky interesting with the Falcons. I would still make that deal. I'd rather take a shot on Bucky Irving at this point, especially with what I probably had Darnell Mooney as in my offense. I would rather have a little more upside in Bucky, in my opinion. 25 seconds straight up, keep it easy. Jermaine Burton, you might not like that one as much as I do, but I certainly would move Jermaine Burton for Bucky Irving for show. And then Braylon Allen, recent trades. Ricky Pearsall, another guy I'd happily move off of. Jerry Jeudy, I'm going to do that. 25 or a 26 second, both were done deals. And Roman Wilson, all of these deals, more than happy making for either one of these backs. You could flip those around any way you want to. Move Jaylen Warren for Braylon Allen, move Darnell Mooney. You get what I'm saying. But get me these guys on my rosters. I want them both. And Zach, I want your thoughts on this one as well.
I'm definitely reevaluating some part of my dynasty processes. And something that we learned from Kyren Williams is trust what you see on the film. Don't put so much stock into the combine. And unfortunately, didn't fully learn my lesson, right? Because I've gotten very excited off of guys. I'm not the Xavier Worthy guy. I'm not that excited. But I still haven't, and maybe that's because I am not as much the film guy, or haven't been. I will be this year because I'm doing work there. The guys who don't show up at the combine, so what? So what? Because that's what Bucky Irving and Braylon Allen were. They were just guys at the combine. But when you go back and you look at the film, you were so high on Bucky Irving. I remember this. I was like, this is going to Bucky Irving, whatever. And that was your guy. That was your guy last year. And we all let the combine affect us a little bit. And that's probably why most of us don't have a lot of shares of these guys. I really only have shares of Bucky Irving where I have Rachaad White because that's just my process. And I'm not happy with that right now because I have a lot of Marshawn Lloyd, who I still like Marshawn Lloyd, but it's feeling very Kendre Miller-esque at this point.
Yep.
It's hard not to feel that way. Couple of stats here. Braylon Allen right now is PFF's. I want to say right now. This was actually before the Sunday games. I don't know how these grades have changed just yet. But as of after Thursday night, before Sunday, Braylon Allen was PFF's number 1 graded running back. Nothing to do with stats. It's grades. Number 1 was Braylon Allen, averaging 5.1 yards per carry on 19 attempts for 96 yards, 4.1 yards after contact. It's insane. He's averaging 4 yards after contact. That's a first down every 3 carries, and that's after contact. That's just absolutely ridiculous. And then to shift over to Bucky Irving, this was, as of this morning, most yards per carry among 34 running backs, Bob, with 25-plus carries this season. Bucky Irving is number 2 at 6.1. Rachaad White is 33rd at 2.1. So I think they both very much mirror each other's situation. I do think Breece Hall will be more involved in the running game than Rachaad White will. But Breece Hall is going to be the pass-catching back. Rachaad White is probably going to be the more relied upon back out of the passing game. But you could see Bucky Irving make a dent there. So 2 very good running backs. We should have trusted our eyes. And instead, we let the combine muddy our process. And we did the same thing with Kyren Williams. And so that, Bob, is something that I'm taking this offseason and putting into practice next season. This is what I saw on film. I don't care if he's a day 3 running back or a day 2, which, by the way, how's the Blake Corum stands doing out there? How you guys all right? You alive? Anybody there? Okay. All right. I'm not worrying about that anymore when it comes to those 2nd and 3rd tier running backs, because it's just get the best, just get the most talented guys there. And for you, Bob, I know Bucky Irving was one of your favorite running backs coming out of the draft process. And before we, if you want to even peel this layer back even further, is before that whole new system was in place at Wisconsin, Braylon Allen was killing it. Mm-hmm. And then they changed the offensive system, which is terrible, which enjoy Tyler Van Dyke. Thank you for taking him off my Miami Hurricanes hands. That system was not productive for Braylon Allen, and we should have trusted what the film showed us in a more pro offense, which was there a couple of years ago. So again, these are much, much deeper discussions. I hope that we start to do this more as a community, and it's definitely something I am figuring out how I can continue to evolve my dynasty process. And that's going to be one of the things heading into the offseason, Bob, is what did I see on film versus what I saw with guys in their underwears in February in Indianapolis or wherever the combine may be.
Yeah. I definitely won't make the Kyren Williams, and not saying, neither of us are saying, I don't think you are, I know I'm not, that Bucky Irving is going to ascend to Kyren Williams levels or anything like that. It's just a matter of not letting us, get sold out because of a poor combine performance. Because that old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. There won't be a third time. I'm not going to do this again where, and honestly, like I even looked at Bucky Irving's stats next to Kyren Williams, and they're all close. And I'm like, why can't this guy that I also loved on film do what this guy does, or at least still be good? And lo and behold, he's been really good in the NFL so far. And I'm excited to see hopefully a lot more production coming from him. Like I said, don't expect Kyren Williams numbers, but I am loving Kyren Williams season, baby. But with that said, we'll move on into the next segment. Something I'm not loving at all is how these tight ends are performing so far. What in the absolute heck are we supposed to do with tight ends right now? Just straight up not producing. So many top flight tight ends continue to be no-shows. Guys like Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, not to mention those dealing with an injury long-term or whatever the case is, or on IR or the PUP. David Njoku, Evan Ingram, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta diagnosed with a low ankle sprain. And there is a small shred of a silver lining here, is that no good tight ends are really producing reliably, or no tight ends right now are really producing reliably or consistently. Everybody at the top of rankings for tight ends right now, scoring wise, has just kind of had a big blow up week. And that's why they're there, because that's how the landscape is right now. It's on its head. So Zach, my question to you and to myself, what's the fix? Is there one? Is the answer to just be patient? Something I hate doing. I like to answer questions for myself, not wait for them to answer themselves. Zach, what are your thoughts on this tight end position right now?
Just when we started to feel like we had things figured out, we don't. We don't. I saw your answer before I wrote mine. Mine's just more piggy. Look, I am going before Bob here. I'm just piggybacking off of what Bob's going to say. There is no good answer here. Whatever your religion is, whether it's, pick up some rosary beads, whatever it may be, and say a prayer and hope every Sunday that you just don't get put into a large tight end deficit like I did going up against Cole Kmet this week, who had 2 weeks of no production and is the tight end 3 now.
Sell high.
So like I don't know. We try to be the guys who have some of the answers. I don't have the answer for this, man. Say a prayer, do your best shot. If guys are scoring 0 points, I'm taking them out of my lineup until I see some consistent production, because I don't know what's happening there. Like, is Mark Andrews hurt? Is he still recovering from last? These are much deeper conversations that I don't know if we have the answers to. Like Tank Dell, right? Is he hurt? Is he nobody talks about Tank Dell was shot in the offseason. We don't talk about like these lingering effects of things. Mark Andrews was in a car accident right before this. We have no idea. So until I see some reliable production, I'm pulling Mark Andrews out of my starting lineup. And I'm like, hey, man, can Noah Fant get me 6 points this week? Like, I have no idea. Bob. You take your best guess. At this point, my best advice to you is play the matchups. Like, you can start to see some trends after 3 or 4 weeks of what defenses are weaker or stronger against opposing tight ends, and play those matchups. There are very few tight ends at this point that are matchup proof. And that's it. Like, that's the best advice I can give you, is be a little bit more analytical with your process and start playing the defensive matchups versus tight ends to the best of your ability at this point.
Yeah, and that will play into a bit of my point here. But like you said, I don't think there's a great fix at this point. I think that we've seen across the league, we a lot of us, I'm sure, have seen those Twitter posts or in the Discord posting from the Twitter, whatever the case is, of how down offenses are in pass yards, passing touchdowns, all of the things in the early weeks of the season so far compared to previous years. And thing is, I'm well on the train that I think things are going to get better. I think things are going to turn around. Things are going to gel. It's just this year, more than in past years, feels more overwhelming, that it's being so underwhelming offensively to start the year with fantasy's sake. And especially at this one position seems so volatile because we don't have a real stud number one going right now. Brock Bowers has been like the guy, and he even had a down week last week. And Trey McBride has been steady Eddie for the most part. Now he's possibly dealing with concussion. I haven't seen that confirmed anywhere yet as of this recording. So it's one of those things where right now, I don't think there's a great move, because even if you're looking to possibly buy into another tight end, that tight end's probably just as toxic of a situation right now. That's just kind of how it is at this point. But to speak to your point of, looking at matchups and things of that sort, there's probably something to be said, and I'm not doing this myself yet, but I'm just putting this out into the ether, that I wouldn't discredit or judge anyone from taking this approach. There's probably a very good argument to sell very highly valued tight ends right now for as much as you can possibly get and just stream the position. And I think maybe this is one of those cases in the offseason where, especially in Dynasty, we see young long-term assets, rookies, whatever the case is, just ascend. Guys like, just to throw out a few names this offseason, Trey Benson, Tyjae Spears are two names that really come to mind of guys that just rose way too high in Dynasty ranks. And now that they haven't performed like people want them to, they're falling down ranks. And maybe that happened a little bit with tight ends as well. That even though Sam Laporta had an incredible season last year and was great, maybe went a little too high. And along with all the other tight ends that we just expected more out of, it's still early in the season. I'm not saying panic. This is one position I'm still not panicking on. I'm sweating it a little bit. I'll say that much, but I'm not at the point of saying, hey, I'm going to just sell for as much as I can and just kind of stream the position best I can. Cause I think maybe that's something good to do at the start of the season in cases like that. But long-term, when offenses start gelling again, I think you're going to be grateful that you still have a top flight tight end. And this could still open some buy low window opportunities for you, because people could be sweating too and wanting to get out on these guys. But tight ends are a fickle beast. We know that for sure. And the last thing, speaking about panicking, we got our panic meter segment here. Shout out to Joe Maiden. I want to say that's the name. I apologize if it's not in the Discord. Jay Maiden, I know that's it, suggested we do a little panic meter session. So a few guys' names that got thrown out by the Discord. Shout out the Discord again. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in there for a free 7-day trial. Check it out. But should we be panicking on guys such as Brandon Ayuk, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jalen Waddle / Tyreek Hill, either one, and or Michael Pittman? Any of those guys, Zach, you don't have to get into all of them, but are any of those guys somebody that you're absolutely panicking about? You have to find another move to make. What do you think about those guys?
I think a lot of this depends on your perspective on the players before the question.
Sure.
Because I'm not panicking on JSN because I didn't expect a lot from JSN. Yeah, you got one boom week. It's very, that offense is very unpredictable after DK Metcalf. It could be Tyler Lockett, could be JSN, could be Noah Fant, could be Kenneth Walker, could be Zach Charbonnet. We don't really know.
Sure.
We don't know. So I'm not panicking on Brandon Ayuk. You kind of have to, this is a little bit slower than I expected, but you should have expected something like this, like a very slow ramp up. The dude was not participating at all in training camp.
Exactly.
Had no game reps before week 1 of the regular season. Very little practice reps. So I don't care how many Instagram videos there are of him in his backyard catching a ball in between 2 trees. I don't care. That's not game reps. That's not practice speed. I would expect him to get better in this offense as the season goes on. Not to mention, without CMC, without Debo, teams are able to focus their defensive attention to Brandon Ayuk, allowing a Juwan Jennings. Like, let's talk a little bit more strategic about why Brandon Ayuk is struggling, and let's not. It's not always so vanilla. It's not like, oh, Brandon Ayuk sucks now. No, like, teams are able to pay attention to Brandon Ayuk 10 times more than they were able to last year when CMC is out there and Debo Samuel is out there and George Kittle is out there. The one person I am panicking on is Michael Pittman, and it's not anything to do with Michael Pittman. It's are we seeing that that floor of the Anthony Richardson come to life, man? It's been rough these last couple of weeks, and like, you may be looking at the box score, but if you watch the games, it's bad. It's bad. There's some really bad like Will Levis type turnovers happening from Anthony Richardson. The one yesterday in the end zone that never should have been thrown. A terrible, terrible turnover. So I am panicking on Michael Pittman, and I don't think the wise thing to do is to throw him on the trade block and see what buy low offers you can get. You just got to wait this one out. I'm not sure if look. Maybe we talked about Mason Rudolph earlier. Joe Flacco is there. Joe Flacco is there. So maybe just wait this out. Who knows? It has nothing to do with Michael Pittman and everything to do with Anthony Richardson not being a good passer of the football. He's a good thrower. He's not a good passer of the football, which is a problem. And then with Tua and Tyreek, I mean, this is, if you like, I'm not starting any of them anymore until Tua comes back. That's just the reality of the situation. You'd be lucky to get double-digit fantasy points from either of those two guys moving forward until Tua is back in that starting lineup. I'm not sure. Was there anybody that I left out on that list?
Nope, you got him.
Yeah. So for me, the big panic is Michael Pittman. Everybody else is really like, just adjust your perspective on what to expect.
Yeah, I am 100% in agreement. Michael Pittman is my sole panic or concern, worry, whatever the case is, because either one of two things needs to happen for his production to improve. Anthony Richardson needs to become a good passer. Anthony Richardson needs to head to the bench, and we need to have Joe Flacco in. And both things could easily happen. I shouldn't say easily, but both things could very well happen. You see a lot of very good things out of Anthony Richardson. There was the great Twitter post where it was back-to-back plays or whatever, where Anthony Richardson hits a dime pass to Alec Pierce, just coffin corner punt style, but to his receiver on a throw and on a kick, and just drops it in there, no problem. The very next play throws it into a lob pass in between 3 Bears defenders, or 3, they played the Bears, right? Yeah. 3 Bears defenders, and just, it's just little things like that aren't going to get you far in the league. But that's my big panic. Like you said with JSN, it's just super frustrating with how the targets in that offense are working out right now, because Tyler Lockett is like just good enough. But the thing I have to say to like give you pause or like make sure you're holding your stance, players do not just get 16 targets for fun. That's not a thing that just happened. 16 targets is not a fluke. So hold on to that. Weather the storm. You might not be able to start him week in, week out, but that's something to, keep your mind on. Brandon Ayuk holding, like you said, beautifully said, what dude wasn't doing anything before the season. So, I mean, yes, probably working out on his own time, things of that sort, but he wasn't playing. He wasn't putting himself at risk till he was getting paid. It takes time. He is behind quite a few weeks of training, and I'd still expect probably another down week. And then maybe I think it'll be kind of a perfect storm once that offense kind of comes together and we see a really healthy or, conditioned Brandon Ayuk, a healthy Debo, healthy CMC, healthy George Kittle. This offense could be really great again. And I think Brandon Ayuk will slot right into that and be great again. As for Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, I have a tough time sitting Hill specifically because I know how stinking good he can be, but he is somebody who I'm, bumping down to my flex slots and is like, is there anybody who I really trust that I could put here? If the answer is no, and I'm just starting scrubs anyway, I'll take my shot with Hill. Waddle, that's one I think you could probably sit, most likely. Those are the guys we're panicking on. Those are the moves we're making. But that's going to be it for the video today. I do hope you all enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts, your moves you're making. Who are you panicking on? Who are you selling high? Who are you buying low? All of the things, we want to hear all about it. And we want to hear from you over in our Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. But Zach, with all that said, we are going to get the heck on out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.